Researchers are now working around the clock to learn more about the new COVID-19 strain. Our Debora Patta takes us inside one of the labs in South Africa where the Omicron variant was first discovered.
Suiting up in protective gear, these scientists are heading off into the biohazard lab of the Africa Health Research Institute. Here they are growing live Omicron, which will be tested against the blood of fully immunized people, as well as those who were previously infected. Heading up this team is virologist Alex Segal.
This is probably the most mutated virus we'd ever seen.
The variant has more than 50 mutations, with over 30 in the spike protein, the part of the virus that aids infection.
It's more of a Frankenstein than others, but it's always something new. I mean, the virus keeps surprising us.
Within 36 hours of discovering the new variant, these scientists had alerted the world. The fear that the variant evades immunity. To find answers, Segal's team is collaborating with other scientists.
This lab has received multiple requests for samples of Omicron, which are being packed to be shipped off to other research institutes around the country.
They will know in about 10 days whether existing vaccines can stop Omicron, but Segal is confident they will still provide some protection. But he warns as long as Africa lags behind in vaccinations, the virus will continue to mutate.
We're going to learn together the rest of the Greek alphabet. Unless we understand why these variants evolve, how they evolve, and be able to predict them.
Omicron has mainly infected young people here. Doctors say their symptoms are mild, but that could change as case numbers increase. Debora Patta, CBS News, Durban, South Africa.
So for more, Dr. Stanley Perlman joins me. He is a professor of microbiology, immunology, and pediatrics at the University of Iowa. He has studied coronaviruses for nearly 40 years. So, Doctor, the World Health Organization says Omicron poses a very high risk globally. Why is this variant worrying scientists?
I think for two reasons. First of all, it seems to be easily transmittable from person to person. That's always a concern. And the second problem is that it has so many mutations, particularly in the part of the protein that binds to its receptor on host cells. Now, we don't know the meaning of this yet, but it's concerning, and that's why people are investigating this virus highly.
South African doctors are seeing an increase in reinfections in people who've already had COVID-19. What does that suggest to you about Omicron and natural immunity?
Well, it tells us that it may not be perfect, but we knew this already from the Delta variant, which also infected people who had been previously infected or previously immunized. So far, the people who have been reinfected have not appeared to be particularly ill. And so if that continues, that, of course, will be a good sign if the virus isn't that virulent. Of course, if it infects lots of people who haven't been vaccinated, some of those will get ill. So there may be another surge of hospitalizations, but we just don't know yet whether this will occur or not.
And Dr. Perlman, remind us, which variants do our current vaccines protect against? And what do scientists need to know to determine whether these shots are effective against this new Omicron?
Well, right now, we know they work well against the original strains of the virus. The beta strain, which was circulating but is not that common, the vaccine efficacy was not that great. This new strain, Omicron strain, is similar in some ways to the beta strain. The Delta variant also is protected. One is protected by past infection or past immunization, but it's not as perfect as against the original strains. And that's really the question, whether people will have imperfect protection or no protection. So far, all the previous variants have said that protection will wane a little bit, but it'll still exist. And people will get milder disease if they get any disease at all. But as I said before, we don't know for sure. Time will tell.
And we've heard Dr. Fauci say that it's going to take some time for the data to come in about the efficacy of the vaccines against the Omicron variant. So in the meantime, why is it still important for people to be fully vaccinated and get those booster shots?
Yeah, so I think even sooner than we'll know about what happens clinically, we're going to know from laboratory tests whether the virus is actually neutralized or eliminated by the antibodies that are present in people. So that we should know in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think, or maybe even less. So that information we'll have. Certainly in the meantime, what we have to do is make sure people have as much immunity as they can, and that's where boosting comes in. And of course, some of the other things that we've talked about over the last 2 years, wearing masks and social distancing and being careful, all those things will matter if we have a virus that's much more transmissible and we have people who have not been vaccinated or are highly susceptible to the infection. So some of the same things we've talked about continue to be important.
And to that point, Doctor, the holidays are already upon us. Nobody wants to go back into lockdown, particularly at this time of the year. Do you think that those steps, social distancing, masking, is that going to be enough to let us have a normal holiday season?
Well, I think that if people do that and they're vaccinated and boosted, I think we can have near to a normal holiday season. Some events are still going to be perhaps off the table, large events with lots of people and lots of shouting. So big events like that may not be reasonable. But I think, as I said, time will tell, because we have 4 weeks until the vacation and the holidays begin, and we should know a lot more information about how this is spreading. So, you know, this virus was identified because the people in South Africa, the scientists in South Africa, do such a fantastic job identifying variants. They have lots of virus sequencing. So the virus was identified there. We don't know in places that don't have such good sequencing whether there are other variants, because this virus has so many mutations that we don't really understand right now where it came from. It's not just another virus that mutated a little bit. So it's either was circulating in a small pocket or there was something unusual that allowed it to emerge. But again, the people in South Africa, the scientists there, have to really be lauded for doing the sequencing and recognizing very quickly that they had a variant virus that was a concern.
Okay, great insight for us. Dr. Stanley Perlman, thank you.
You're very welcome.